I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on today's webinar. My name is Assad. I'm with Kinship, and Isabel, my partner in crime here, who usually hosts these things, is here as well from Michelson Fat Animals. We are doing a webinar today on artificial intelligence and pet care. I'm really excited to have John Honchariw. I believe I pronounced that right, John. Is that correct?
Yeah, well done.
and his dog Boomer, the founder and CEO of Companion Labs, joining us today to talk about AI and pet care. And really, this is going to be a really awesome conversation. We hope that you guys will participate as well. For those who have not joined us before, we typically do about 20 to 30 minutes in some sort of presentation, followed by 15 to 30 minutes of Q&A. You can ask questions at any time in the chat window. You'll be muted the entire time. And again, the session is being recorded. If there tends to be fewer people on, then we might ask you to unmute yourself and ask your question and have the conversations go that way as well. We'll see what happens as we go through. A little bit about Leap Venture Studio and Academy. We basically, I'm sure a lot of you have seen this before, but we are here to serve you. We have two programs, our Academy and our Venture Studio, and our goal is to really provide resources to early stage pet care startups from across the community, across the world, to get them the resources that they need to get to the next level. We are a joint venture between Michelson Fat Animals, a really amazing nonprofit based in Los Angeles, and Kinship, a division of Mars Pet Care, really focused on innovation and creating the future of pet care. Definitely, if you haven't already, follow us on Twitter, sign up for our newsletter, come into our Slack community. Isabel and I will post some stuff on how you can join the conversation. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to John so he can get started on his presentation. Thank you, John.
Cool. Thanks, sir. All right, guys. Let's see. I'm newer to Zoom. Here we go. Cool. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes? Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Yes,
I normally don't wear hats for formal occasions, but my hair has gone like 2 months without a barber, so bear with me. That's kind of the rights to what I normally look like, at least in 5 years. Google paid for that photo. Okay, what I was asked to talk about. First things first, I'm going to, as I always do, I'm going to set adequately low expectations, and I'll talk through that in a little bit. I'll introduce myself. I've been asked to talk a little bit about founder story, which I will probably tend to skip over. I hate talking about myself, but please prompt me if you like. I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing at Companion, and then I'll pontificate a little bit on AI, but it's such a broad and overused term. Like, I'm more than happy to take the conversation wherever the audience wants to go. Cool. So let's go. I'll introduce myself. But no, actually, let's do low expectations. Okay, I had a kid 2 months ago. I'm tired. I'm super excited to talk to you guys, but we just brought Pacific into our lives. We have 3 critters at home. Pacific is one of them, our dog Boomer, my lovely wife Michelle. We have Naya over here with one of Ben Jacobs and Whistle's great devices, which she no longer wears because she didn't love it. And we're also currently ramping production at our facility in Fremont. Companions, we build really smart hardware, which we're really excited about. And we're very lucky considering everything that's gone on in hardware for folks like China supply chains or even just US supply chains have been totally disrupted. And we're very fortunate that we were able to stay ahead of the curve, and we're still ramping. We're still delivering units, but we're working very hard to keep it that way right now. We have a contract manufacturer down in Fremont. We have a bunch of California suppliers that we're very lucky to have. Talk a little bit about myself. So I'm a huge geek by background. All my degrees are in engineering, mechanical, aeronautical, and systems. I did kind of my early part of the career at Bain & Company in San Francisco, helping large tech firms with strategy. I got dead lucky joining 2 deep tech startups that ended up scaling pretty quickly with new business models. One's this company called Amprius. It was one of the only Kleiner Perkins companies to kind of make it out of the startup era alive, or the clean tech era alive. We came up with a piece of nanostructured silicon that gives lithium-ion batteries much more energy, and I was able to help with the early product work with like NASA, DARPA, Army. We then took it to consumer electronics, and we're actually producing batteries for electric cars today, which is super fun. And then AppDirect was a cloud startup. And the only thing that kind of unifies all of the logos on the top is just I've had a lot of fun opportunities to work across very different areas of technology. Amperis being nanotechnology for clean energy, AppDirect being cloud, and Google was kind of all over the place. I got this weird call from Google that while my wife was going on to business school at Stanford, they wanted me to come work with the early units to think through early products and commercialization. So working with Google X, working with the autonomous cars and the glasses and internet balloon, that kind of thing. Google TensorFlow, which is the deep learning framework. It's both hardware and software now. And then Google itself. So working on well, I guess I should say like the robotic side as well, which is where I spent the team at Google had put together this incredible board of folks to work with all of these robotics companies that Google had acquired. And they wanted us to report into this board and to help the CEOs of all those acquired companies look at various products and applications we could go build given everything that Google had acquired with those companies and the phenomenal teams. So I got to spend a lot of time looking at automation and robotics, and that's where I fell in love with what we're doing. I'm super lucky to work with like an amazing team overall, and then a couple of other executives that are just phenomenal for what we're doing, and also just great people. Shannon just recently joined as our president and COO. She is a C-level exec and founder at a variety of super interesting consumer hardware companies. Jimmy Jane, I won't say like what they do, but take a look. It's fascinating and a kind of first of kind and an intimate area of consumers' lives. Nova, one of the first sous vide companies that took off and got acquired, and she's also on the board of directors of StartX. I guess one of your guys' competitors, maybe. Sad. And then Paul used to run. I don't know who's on the call might be familiar with CCI, but it stands for Canine Companions for Independence. I think it's the world's largest organization that helps train dogs to help people in wheelchairs. He was head of programs for a while and CEO for a number of years after he did an exec MBA at Stanford, and just a super knowledgeable guy on training some pretty advanced things, and has been a go-to guy for folks like the Marine Corps, DARPA, and the TSA. Okay, cool. So Assad and Isabel, I know that everyone had a chance to view the video, it sounds like, earlier today.
Yeah, we sent it out this morning. I'm hoping that you guys all got it. It was in an Eventbrite link that you should have gone around 9 o'clock this morning Pacific time.
Okay, cool. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, I would mute right now, and I would ignore me for a little bit. I'd go watch that video because what I'm about to say will make a ton more sense. I'm not going to cover the basic stuff, but we can come back to it at the end if you'd like. I'm going to give a replay of a talk that I was asked to give at the Media Lab late summer of last year. It's by a group that maybe some of the folks on this call are familiar with, but there's this interesting group of folks that came together to give a TED Talk. They call themselves kind of the Interspecies Internet Group. It's Vint Cerf, kind of one of the godfathers of the internet, Peter Gabriel, Diana Reese, and Neil Gershenfeld, who runs the Bits and Atoms Center at MIT and next to the Media Lab. And they brought together this conference of folks. It was like the 40 or 50 or maybe even 60 people working in the field of using technology to communicate with animals. And so I'll give the same talk that I gave then, and I played our video up front, which is hopefully the video you watched earlier. But I'll walk through that talk, and then I'll come back to the AI, kind of the broader AI things towards the end. So this is what I told that audience, which is primarily academics, but some commercial, which is, I think the technology currently launching, like right now and over the last year or two, is going to massively deepen and widen our understanding of and ability to communicate with animals. I think that all of these revolutions start with consumer applications that can scale, and that they scale because consumers love and care about them. The last message, and what I would echo to this group too, is like we will all, a companion generally, like we'll always try to be fun to talk to and always want to be thoughtful partners of anyone in the space. We've been shy about PR and publicity to date. We just started doing some. We're about to do a bunch more. But for 3 years, we kind of ran silent just because there's a ton of work to do, and we were really excited about it. But we're going to start talking with more and more folks. So where's Companion? So I'd love to be talking to you from our boardroom today, but I'm at home with my fantastic family. But we've been at home now for a month, which is crazy. Normally we'd be in this little ramshackle shack that we are super fortunate to have from the SFSPCA for free. We have like 3 or 4,000 square feet there, lab space, kennel space. This old kennel we converted into our headquarters. But it's a SFSBCA, super forward looking. They have an amazing welfare and animal behavior department, and they loved. I approached their chairman probably 3 or 4 years ago and said, "We have this crazy box that can automatically train your dogs for adoption." And he said, "Great. I would please install those as soon as possible. We have 1,500 volunteers at the SFSBCA, but this is super important. It's super hard to do at scale." We're like, "Great, we'll install them." And then the next thing he said is, "Can I also send these boxes home with everyone who adopts a dog from my shelter?" Like, that's the essence of our business model, is that we think doing the basic obedience training and behaviors to impressive levels, or levels people have never seen before. Like, one, it's going to change how consumers can interact with their dogs, but it's also going to help a lot of dogs get adopted and stay adopted. And it's also going to help people feel really close to their animals at home, which is why we're super excited about it. And there's this really fun benefit, which is there's a consumer product. There's a great consumer product here and a great B2B product. And it also just has, if you launch the product, almost by definition, you'll be helping shelters and helping other organizations as well. So we're doing all the things we're doing in shelters, we're doing it on a nonprofit basis, because it's super easy for us to make the argument to our board that not only is it the right thing to do, it also is a great marketing opportunity for us. Like, if there are other leaders in animal welfare that are talking about companion. But so anyway, I mentioned that's the kind of Thomas model aspect of what we're doing. Our team is some phenomenal folks in computer vision. Sorry, CV is computer vision, behavior. I actually forget what hardware. There you go. We're doing hardware. That's what HW means. And human user interaction. Our headquarters at SFSBCA. We're very fortunate to manufacture with a great CM down in Fremont. Okay, so the big deal, like what are we so excited about? And the kind of where does AI play into this is the kind of the natural implication from a couple of facts. Like, this is the first fact, which is animals communicate quite a bit through movement and posture. And this is both conscious thought, like the dog sitting by the door wants to go outside, and unconscious thought, like a dog that's hunched over, maybe their back's weirdly positioned, is unconsciously trying to tell you something. But we just don't pick up on it today. We're not trained to. We don't have the perfect memories and absolute precision that machines do. And this is true for all animals. It's true for humans as well. But what's changed is we now have this technology at what technologists call the network edge. So basically, like in consumers' hands, that can sense this motion and posture with perfect precision and perfect memory. This change has been driven by cars and phones. Like, it's been driven by the same sensors that power Tesla and the same Waymo and all those guys, and then the same things that power your Face ID. And it's the same technology. And it gained massive scale, and it's kind of an open software generally. And then if you want to get in the details of it, which we more than happy to if you're curious about it, but specifically depth cameras and low cost GPUs have enabled this. So the ability to AI is super interesting to do in the cloud. So sending data up to some server somewhere and having a bunch of GPUs do compute on it and trying to spit out an answer, like, that's cool. And but to do real time stuff, to do things in the real world and be able to send something and immediately take action on it in a time that doesn't, in a period of time where you can really make impact, you have to do it at the edge. And so these low cost GPUs mean you can have a GPU or kind of an AI chip in a phone or in a car, or in our case, in all of our devices. There's the consumer side of this too, which I know little about what we're trying to learn about. And that's why I'm super happy to have Shannon on board, which is all of these revolutions happen. They don't just happen because it's the right thing to do. They happen because you can put this cool new technology in what's a kind of a sexy and cool package. Tesla, like, I know Tesla's way too used example in all Silicon Valley conversations, but it's true. Like, they weren't the first EV, they weren't the first electric vehicle, but they made it appealing, they made it cool, and they also made it better. Like, that was one of the big insights to me in the early days, was that it can't just be trained kind of as good or kind of near as good. It needs to be better. That was one of the things that really kind of pushed us. And also, like, I think it's fun if you can have a product that really displays your passion. It should say something about what you care about. Like, hopefully, if you buy a companion product, it hopefully signals that you care about animal welfare, you care about positive reinforcement, you care about opt-in versus opt-out, and it's also just delightful. Like, you enjoy it. This is the kind of the pitch I gave to the largely academic audience I was talking to was, 60 million US homes have a dog. Like essentially we're going to start having conversations with lots of them. Like this is a multi-year conversation where we have built a piece of technology that can sense what an animal's doing and is taking actions and communicating back to it. And why do we do this? Like, why is it interesting for us? I think it's the fundamental belief that understanding drives empathy. That if you can create more understanding, you will naturally create more empathy. It's kind of inescapable. There's just gravity to that idea. And done right, like we're starting with the kind of the animal that has the highest mind share and highest spend. Basically, that's where you'd want to go start a business. And we're fixated on the problem we think is the biggest one that's unsolved. Like that's the right place to start, but this could translate across all animals. It could have implications on farms and oh, sorry, besides this, but it could have a variety of implications for a variety of, like, not only within companion animals like cats and birds and stuff, and we can talk through that if you guys want, but also with cattle and livestock generally. And this was really fun. I actually got to meet and spend some time with Amy, or not Amy. Oh, her name escapes me, but this wonderful woman, the scientist down at Stanford, I believe, who trained Coco. She was at the conference too, and I get to spend a lot of time chatting with her. Like they probably spent $1 million training Coco, and a variety of human language and signs to communicate back. Like, what if you could reduce that? I actually cringe when I hear the word dog training, but we use it simply because it's the easiest to describe and most graspable, essentially, most approachable term that people are familiar with. We don't like it because we view it as teaching, and we're teaching language skills. Like we're teaching the basic skills that you need to interact with your dog that make it safe, make it convenient. And what if we could do that for all animals and give them the capability to communicate to the extent possible, to the extent that their breed is possible or their species is possible? Like what if we gave that to everyone? Because the cost of what we're doing, the marginal cost, approaches zero over time.
John, somebody had a question, if that's okay.
Shoot.
Oh, so first of all, people are like really excited that you got to hang out with the Coco trainer teacher. But one question was, does the sensing go beyond general posture, or can it capture ear, tail, eye movements as well?
Yes. So what can I say there? I think the limit, like the way I think about the limits of vision is it's the camera. And if you can see what you want to see through the camera, that you can train the computer to recognize it. It's simply a matter of optimization software. So I'll stay a little bit away from exactly what we've enabled on the devices right now. But it's safe to say that we're super excited about seeing all of the different aspects of an animal that give you insight into how that animal's doing. And like we're specifically really interested, is that animal comfortable? Is that animal having fun? Is there anxiety in the animal that we've either caused or that something else has caused, so we can try to help with it? And that's fundamentally why I was, when we were starting the company, I was dead set on using computer vision versus like a wearable, like a collar or something else, simply because you can see far more with a camera. Not only in terms of on the animal itself, you can see tens of thousands of points on the animal as opposed to just one accelerometer around one point. And you can also scale it. So you don't have to, I think there's already a company doing essentially Fitbit for cattle, which is cool. And like it shows the value of being able to identify if cattle are becoming sick or another health condition that's valuable to know about. But it's way, way more scalable to do that with, instead of 10,000 Fitbits, do it with one camera on the barn door. It just seems like that's the way we're headed. I think that not everyone's going to wear tons of wearables in the future. I think that we're definitely going to have tons of cameras. Cool. Sorry, that was long-winded, but does that answer the question?
Yeah, perfect.
Good question. Okay. AI. So I was trying to, it's a fascinating topic. And there's so much in here, but I was trying to distill it down to like the two things I thought were most impactful for this audience, which is like the way I think about it, like looking like both on like the robotic stuff, the Google TensorFlow stuff. I think that for as a startup founder, I'm generally really interested in like, what can I do right now? Like, what are the things that new technology unlocks? And the way I think about it in the pet space is kind of two thrusts. One, I think that people smarter than I am can do tons of really interesting things in the pharma space for vets and pet. because I think you can use AI to look for patterns in really large data sets. We're doing a little bit of that, but we're mainly in the second category, which is automating some small, discrete decision or judgment that humans used to make. So in our case, it's is that dog sitting right now? Is that dog ready to work? Is that dog comfortable? And we're going to do lots more, but that's what we're doing right now. Um, and we're doing that. And the reason I'm excited about that is that not only does that bring what used to be a very expensive, like 100, maybe $200 an hour trainer, which is out of the grasp of most of the US, right? But not only does that radically reduce that cost, it can potentially greatly improve it. The spiel I normally give, talking to investors, talking to friends, partners, is I normally say something like, if you could just automatically train a dog in someone's house in a cool looking product, like that'd be kind of fun. That'd be awesome. And then I say immediately, like, that's actually not what we're doing. Like, we're replacing 100 kind of messy human repetitions. Not that not that we don't try. Like everyone generally tries to train their dog in good faith. We're okay at it, but it's something like the skills required for training, patience, skill, timing, like those are things machines excel at. And we're replacing those 100 messy human repetitions with 10,000 from a superhumanly precise machine. So my idea number two in this instance about automating some small discrete decisions or judgment, what it means is we're going way, way beyond what people think is normal training. And like our goal is to give everyone superpowers with their animal, so that they experience a relationship, a bond with their dog that feels much more like the responsiveness, the bond that someone that has a dog that Paul helped train from CCI. That those dogs are $150,000. But not only that, I think it's also to educate or help with the education. I did some training, or I used to help teach training classes at the SFSPCA, and one of the things that I think most folks don't understand, just because it's just tough to learn about all the different things in life, is you need to train your dog throughout time. Like it's a use it or lose it kind of thing. It's just like exercise. You have to bring it up to a good initial level and keep going. So that's one thing we can help with, is basically like sliced bread, make it super easy to get, and then keep doing it throughout the dog's life. Cool. And we can talk about like the other things companion can do, but maybe I'll pause there. Like I didn't mention this in the agenda, but I am not, as you said, if you Google search me, you might find like a LinkedIn page and some of the early startup stuff, but I generally I'm not a huge talker. I haven't done a TED talk or anything. So like, I love to hear people's questions and react to it.
Yeah.
I'd love to trigger a bunch of discussions. So hopefully maybe aside, do we have some questions?
Yeah, definitely. We have. So one person, Jess, asked, would love to hear how you price your product and if you have a different price point for shelters versus consumers.
Yes. So you can see our rack rates right now for our B2B product online at joincompanion.com. We're taking reservations. Like we've already deployed that. We've already started to deploy that product, and we're taking kind of reservations for the next wave. We don't want our customers to have to take any risk on the hardware, because we know it's going to get better over time. It's already pretty good, but it's going to change a lot in the next 5 or 10 years. So we offer our product as a service, which is for $250 a month for single dogs. Like we will, train for hundreds of hours. And so it's kind of an order of magnitude reduction in cost. If you think about a professional trainer being $3, $4, $5 a month, then it also means that we can be with the animal for 24 hours a day if we see anxiety, or if the animal needs engagement, we can be there. But we price it as a service. For consumers, actually, one of the things we're going to update on our website soon is, given the shelter in place order, we are going to make some of our units available to consumers at a discounted rate in the San Francisco Bay Area for the next, that's going to happen in the next week or two. We think it's just kind of a fun thing to do for the community right now. And two, because we're about to, I'm going to give a talk on CNET, I think like a 20-minute talk next Tuesday, with one of the old editors in chief. Is a fun guy, Brian Cooley, who's also on the board of Marin Humane. But it's going to be a lot about how the shelter in place has impacted dogs today. And we think we're about to see a really big wave of separation anxiety, which can be a really painful problem for dogs and for owners. And because we're all spending 24 hours a day with our dogs right now if we're at home. And so as soon as that changes, it's going to be pretty tough on everyone. And one of the things, our hypothesis, we have two pieces of information. One is that we've seen amazing results with our product and separation anxiety, which we didn't expect. We thought it'd be helpful. and the core product is still training. But for whatever reason, just the animal having the engagement, having the companion at home seems to be amazingly effective at helping treat the symptoms of separation anxiety. And we have early evidence of it helping long term, like a month or two of working with a companion means your dog doesn't have it 6 months later, which is super cool. And we're I shouldn't talk more about that right now. There'll be some news about that coming soon. But for all those reasons, if you're interested in the consumer version or having one of our business units for your house, please feel free to get in touch with me. Maybe I'll share a link with Isabel and Assad. And I think we either have a form up or we'll have one soon for anybody else who wants to grab one locally.
That's great. Awesome, John. Yeah, we'll definitely, I would love to try one, and I'm going to speak for Isabel too.
Cool.
um, we have a few more questions that are in. One, do you establish individual baselines of the animal's behavior? For example, a dog can have a tendency to wag their tails in a certain way that does not necessarily mean discomfort.
Oh, cool. Yes, but I'd say we can do so much more there. The training, there's more articulate descriptions probably on our website. I should get better at this, but essentially we work at your dog's own pace. It's the same curriculum. Every dog gets the same baseline. The first thing we do with all dogs is make sure your dog's having a good time. Basically, it's just introducing the device and having fun with the dog. As soon as your dog's past that, kind of we call it kind of foundations training. Then we move into all the different behaviors that you would want, whether it's sit, stay, that kind of thing. And all of those are bespoke to your dog in terms of how quickly your dog wants to move. And bespoke to what you like as well. Like we have a kind of a standard package, but there'll be options kind of to change those behaviors over time. And like we're focusing on doing the really important things extremely well in the near term, like the basic obedience commands, which all the research shows improves adoption and retention and increases bond. But there'll be 30 or 40 over time in terms of all the different things you can pick from if you want your dog to work on. So to circle back, because I tend to be long-winded, what was the original question, Assad?
Do you establish a baseline?
Baseline, yes. Yes, effectively, yes. I think there's so much more to do there. The better answer to the question is we can do so much more and on so many different dimensions. I think whatever the user just highlighted a really interesting one. There's probably 20 different baselines I'd love to do. But we're really just hyper-focused on, as a start, you kind of have to be on kind of bringing the most value early. And then there's a lot of other little nuances we want to do.
John, can you explain to me the difference or the similarities between artificial intelligence and machine learning?
Can you help me with that one? So like there's I don't know, I used to be a little bit of a geek on this. Like we had some weird conversations at Google Robotics and some fast the machine learning. I think of AI just being lots of different buckets of machine learning. I think when most people have the oh my god, AI is going to take over the world conversations, I think that they're talking about AGI. So kind of a generalized artificial intelligence that's able to not only excel at a simple, discrete problem, but is able to work at a higher level and define the problem and then go attack it. I think there are many, many more bright people in the world, more educated people. Like there's books by Nick Bostrom and others that are interesting reads there. But for the context of this conversation, I think that's what that person maybe means. Maybe
that person was me, and I think I've just heard people use them interchangeably, and when we see applications from startups or startups pitch to me and they're saying they're using AI, I sometimes question whether it's AI or machine learning or just some like a really cool algorithm.
Totally. It's all software. Like at the end of the day, it's all software, right? I remember like one of our early phenomenal engineers would always correct me if I called it machine learning or computer vision or something. It's just software, man. It's just, I think machine learning is lots of different discrete problem solving algorithms that help. If you apply a lot of them, it feels like artificial intelligence, but it's really just a lot of individual algorithms solving discrete problems that we know that those algorithms are particularly good at doing. I think anything above that is when you start to get in the terrain of the terrain of AGI, or it's a generalized artificial intelligence. Yeah, I think there's some industry acronym that's recognized for it, but I think that I think it's better to call us a company using machine learning, because we've only scratched the surface in terms of what we can do. Like if you think about all of the different layers of our stack, which is recognizing what the dog's doing. Then like once you actually know what the dog is doing in the environment, like what are the actions you take? That's a whole different software layer. And there's a variety of different tools of machine learning and artificial intelligence you can do in each of those layers. And we've barely scratched the surface in terms of what we're going to do there, which is super fun.
Yeah, that's great. A couple more questions and then we can move on. Or what do you want to do? You want to answer a couple more questions?
Those are all the slides I had. Yeah, I'd love
cool.
to
Okay, great.
start a discussion. I mean, you can open it up if you want.
Yeah, sure. Sophie had a question about are you using any of this to look into horse welfare? It's a big subject.
Cool. We have a number of equestrians on the team. Shannon and my colleague Noemi are riding almost every weekend, it feels like. We can't wait to do that. We're not doing anything right now. I know there's a couple of folks looking at it, a couple of fun folks in the industry. I think one of like someone in the Coastal family and then a couple others, but we're not doing anything with horses right now. I know there's a couple of simple computer vision applications that can help with some of the severe medical conditions or kind of medical emergencies that horses face in barns. I'm not as familiar with as my colleagues are with it, but we'd love to work on that soon. We're still kind of keeping the mentality of do one thing extremely well, and then once we've built that product, then maybe we can call ourselves a platform play to go do other things. But we're hyper focused on doing one product extremely well first.
Great. I'm gonna have Louisa. If you want to come off of mute and ask your question.
Sure. Sorry, it's a long one. Hi.
No worries.
So, human trainers are really bad at being consistent. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we do. And although the machine is a really good, consistent way to train a dog, there is a value in how trainers adapt their training protocols depending on the dog. Mm-hmm. So how good is the machine at doing that? Because, it can tell the dog to do the thing 100 times without frustration, but maybe at 50, it should have changed what it was doing.
Cool. A great question. What I have is data, which says that so far we haven't seen dogs we can't train with our existing algorithms. I completely agree. I think that humans try. There's a variety of interesting nuances to the protocols that human users train. Like every human trainer has a slightly different opinion as to how things should be done, and I love them for it. They all care about animals quite a bit. We seem to have found the common denominator for effective training, and we just keep it dead simple. Like it's all based on kind of operant conditioning, using positive reinforcement, and just being really, really consistent. And so far that seems to have worked really well. I think for sure we are going to see behaviors we want to train or other things that are not working. We'll have to try something else. But so far we've been pretty lucky that we haven't had to kind of switch modalities or switch schools of thought when it comes to training. And then let's see on the other thing on training, like what we're doing, it is a little bit different than people normally view it in the sense of it's the same exact type, using positive reinforcement, rewarding behavior, then associating with a signal. But we're trying to do it to a kind of we're trying to hold ourselves to a very high standard. So we differentiate between like, is that a sloppy sit or is that a real good formal sit? We also have kind of superpowers when it comes, because we have infinite patience, right? The machine can wait for a 2-second stay, then a 4-second stay, then an 8-second stay. We can go and we can take a step back if the animal, it looks a little anxious or if they're a little hesitant. But we have that's a really nice thing about having infinite time and infinite patience. And the last thing is we use your own voice. We use a human voice. And we know we've looked at the sound kind of opportunity quite a bit in terms of how to make your animal responsive to that recorded voice and make sure that translates over really well. So it can be you, it can be your partner, it can be your kids, or it can just be only you if you want. Introduce 20 different voices, but maybe we reward the dog for just your voice. Like there's actually lots of fun you can have if you think about it. And the voice versus the other thing about what differentiates us is we don't use It's all opt-in. Like the dog has to want to play with us and it has to want to offer behaviors, or else it can just walk away into like the living room or something, right? And the fun thing there is, so we're not luring the dog, we're not forcing the dog in any postures. We just wait to capture them, because the dogs naturally will walk around, dogs naturally will lay down, dogs naturally will sit. We just wait for those things to happen. And we do all the training without gestures, without body language. So that's a very high standard in that your dog will know the voice command. And we're proud of that, because it means that your dog will be able to understand the command when it's behind a tree or behind a building or 100 yards away. Whereas your dog probably wouldn't be able to see your body language in those scenarios.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question?
Sure.
So are you collecting all that data on the back end? And if so, like, do you think you'll start seeing things like breed differences in training or size differences? Like,
Totally. I think that's a great question, and I completely agree. I think there's a implied assertion that the data is valuable, and I totally think it is. And we've kept every single video session in an encrypted storage bucket online. But for a consumer company, like, privacy is super, super important. So we're only going to store consumer data, like in homes, if it's not part of a test, if consumers want us to. And the reason they would do that is if they want kind of some of the more advanced features where we need to see the data to like make bespoke training for their dog, or if they want to help us train more shelter animals, because if we're able to work with their dog, it'll help our algorithms that much more and work with shelter animals. But I absolutely think we're going to see breed differentiations. I think we already do. I'm just trying to think of I'm not sure if it's breed. There's a couple of different ways to cut the data. I can't remember what were the biggest distinguishers. I mean, for us, environment's a huge one. Like, is an animal comfortable at home, or is the animal literally out of a van from the California Central Valley, where it was rescued from another shelter and it's coming to the SFSPCA? Those are just radically different animals, right? Those are the biggest differences. And I think all of my colleagues, and we have a number of folks it's been a pleasure to work with on our advisory board, like Evan McLean, who runs one of the cognition labs down in Arizona, Sasha Protopova, and Erica Furbacher. So it's a couple of thought leaders in the space. And they're very, very excited about just the data coming off the platform. As soon as we are in tens of thousands of homes, millions of homes, it'll be the largest data source, the kind of longitudinal data source that any researcher in the field, we'd love to make as available as we can.
thank
Cool.
you.
Yes, you want to ask your question?
Yeah. Hey, Jessica here. So I was curious about the patent process. Have you gone through it? Was it cost you? What are your thoughts?
They're valuable. I hear you need them. I think the most important thing is getting a really good IP attorney who you trust, because as from a founder perspective or kind of early startup team member perspective, like, IP is really complex, and you need someone good to work with who you trust. We work with a great firm up in the Bay Area who just does early stage hardware. And they also did a ton of work on the autonomous car project. So computer vision, like understanding what we can patent from software. So I love the business model. Like, we looked at both shocks, and we looked at the firm we're using. And I like the firm we're using. They both use the standard pricing. So it costs X amount per patent, X amount per, what's the term of art when you're not the term of art, but the formal term of when you're just sealing the date for IP.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? No. I'll think of it in a second. Anyway, there's set prices. So it's that one's easier than trying to manage corporate legal, which can add up really, really quick. And there aren't really set prices for it. They're just kind of rules of thumb.
Can you give like a ballpark range on what you expect, like 50,000, 100,000?
So it's like we pay like 15 to 20 for a full patent.
Okay.
We pay 2.5 to 5 for the initial filing. And I would figure, like, if it's a complex product and it's kind of in a first of kind space, you might be doing a lot. I don't think everyone has a different point of view on IP. And I think that what I generally trust now is the idea that if you're early stage, you just want to make sure you have freedom to operate. Like, so just file like an initial around your product and get going.
Mhm.
And then you're going to want more and more as you approach like a Series A or Series B. Like the investors are going to want to see a little bit of that, and they're going to want to do an IP search just to make sure there's nothing blocking you. But I think that you create a really great company really by having a really great product, not by having a great IP portfolio. I think that it's part of your defensive moat, but I can't even imagine. I have no desire to sue someone because they're infringing on some of our IP. Like I have a desire to build a great product.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool.
John, do you have examples of other people in the pet space that are doing cool stuff with AI?
Ben Jacobs would know more than I would.
More on most things, I think.
Yeah.
Or anybody else on the call? And Jess, if you want to share what you're doing too.
Yeah. So I'm CEO of Adoptimize, and we automate great pet photos from a video.
Cool.
Yeah, and it specifically is for animal shelters. It significantly increases adoption rates. Obviously, it's better product photography.
Totally.
So
that's awesome. Well, I think we'd love I don't know if you have a business API, but it'd be super fun for us to look at for a couple features of our product.
Yeah, I'd love to chat.
Cool. Yeah, because we show consumers videos and that kind of thing. So like having thumbnails and stuff's important for us. In terms of Asad, you were asking if they're good, interesting examples of companies using AI. I was thinking through this morning. I would have to imagine there's some on the vet side or some on the pharmacological side that have been doing some interesting things and with data that I know less about. I haven't seen anyone besides kind of a somewhat similar product, Jessica, that you probably come across these guys as there's a firm, almost like a nonprofit. I don't think they're for profit, that have been doing a dog photo matching service, so you can help find your lost dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I thought that was
Finding Rover.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, they're awesome.
But I haven't seen other examples. That's odd.
Sure. And does anybody else know of any examples out there they want to share?
I mean, I think we saw a similar picture. There's a firm called Cainthus out of Ireland, I think, that measures dairy cattle and their ability to produce milk based on facial recognition.
Cool. Yeah, I think like there's tons of opportunities like on the livestock side. I think there's wearables out there. It would shock me if there was nobody, if there wasn't anyone doing things on vision. I think that there are some pieces of gait analysis software. Like we're super interested in that field. So gait analysis being like watching cows walk, watching dogs or horses walk, or people. Like there's a number of applications. Like we're interested in that space because it'd be really easy for us to do with our platform. Train an animal, walk back and forth in front of the camera, and then do gait analysis on it. I don't know those firms. I think it's kind of I don't think they're set up as like venture funded startups. I think it's just kind of a license or consulting kind of gig, but I'm not sure.
Claude wants to know, do you think computer vision can replace ID microchipping?
I thought I was going to get this question. Yes, I think it can. In the sense that I think that vision will get good enough to the point where you are able to uniquely identify a dog. Maybe even on an absolute basis, but at the very least, if you have the image and you have the additional signal of geographic location, like approximate geographic location, with those two things, I bet we could get to a pretty high confidence identification of a dog. That's what the startup I was just mentioning with Jessica, I think it's kind of on the way there. They probably have a better answer. It's not something I've looked at too much because we just train the dog in front of us basically. So we haven't had to do that. But I have no doubt we are going to get there. I think it's just a matter of resolution on the camera. And then if you allow us to look at other signals, like if that dog was picked up by a local shelter, if we know that geographic location, where we can greatly limit the scope of potential matches.
Claude, did you have a follow-up question that you want to ask?
Yeah, I fully agree on the fact that crossing facial recognition with geographies, so region, location, zip code will be enough on I guess to go on this kind of facial recognition using pictures of a lost dog to match it to the one that has been declared as lost.
Totally. I think there's I think that's gonna be a really fun use case. I think I wanted to move because there's probably still an argument to make for chips. There might be like health, medical, other information that is valuable to have literally with the animal. I'm not sure. Actually, I'm not an expert on chipping. I think that it's probably had a lot of benefits for other reasons. So I'd never want to say that we'll replace chipping without knowing all the benefits it provides. But I think we would be able to provide at least the identification piece. And I think that like there's so many fun things to think through when it comes to if what we'll be able to do with vision on dogs in the future. Like that maybe just some teasers like what if it seems intuitive to me that with the right camera you can detect dogs' ears are like relatively thin skin, and their face includes some relatively thin skin as well. So like it seems intuitive that you should be able to pick up the pulse rate from a camera. It's really good infrared camera. We already have a variety of interesting sensors in the device, but I think you should be able to do that. I think you should be able to look at that over time. I think that with all the data we have today, like it'd be very easy for us to put together like a perfect 3D model of your dog, so that we could understand how your dog's volume is changing over time, as the body shape is changing. And we're not always going to see it in a perfect angle, but because we have spent hours and hours and hours with your dog while you're at work or away or can't be there with your dog, there's so many interesting things I think you can do on the vision side.
Back on the idea, microchips, we saw that only 20% of pets are microchips.
Really? Oh wow! I would have hoped it was higher.
100% have a face. So, but and back on what you said, do you imagine that body cognition score can be also assessed?
Sorry, I missed I think you said body content score or
body condition score. So the condition if the pets or the dog are lean, obese, normal.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so like the 1 through 5 or 1 through 6 scale.
Yep,
yeah, you can see the ribs, that kind of thing. Yeah, I think generally speaking, this isn't my framework. Actually, one of the TensorFlow leaders said this to me, which I think has generally been really good advice, is if a human can identify it with what you're seeing through the camera, then a machine can too. And there, I think our cameras are already good enough to be able to distinguish like rib shadows and be able to look at a silhouette of how a dog's changing over time. I think there's lots of, I think that we have capabilities to do 10x more than we're currently doing. The limitation is not the hardware. The limitation is just the time that we have to write the software right now.
And just in terms of your operation, like what goes on day to day, and how big is your team? I know you shared a couple of people, but like, do you just have a team of coders that are just like coding away, looking at videos? I would love to know like what that setup is like.
Yeah, it's a really fun team. They're great folks. It draws a fun, like a lot of our folks we met, they were in like animal behavior programs or they were volunteers at a shelter. It's funny how we kind of we all cobble ourselves together. But I think it's about 20 effectively with folks we're working with on a part-time basis. Like we need to build this engineering module, and we've been super fortunate. Like we've kept our burn very, very low. So we're burns like $100,000 a month, which could sound like a lot depending on the stage you're at. But for hardware that is, we're selling active complex hardware, like we're very happy with it. And our full time is about 10, and so we have this interesting bimodal experience level on our team. We have some folks who have like 30 years of experience and ran organizations of like 300 people. And we have folks who are like right out of school. And it's this super fun mix. And it tends to be like just 1 or 2 people per department. And if you think about it, like we're stretched across some complex departments. So it's like hardware, software. So for like the low level hardware, high level hardware, the software, like computer vision versus animal behavior protocols versus like firmware, that kind of stuff. There's the animal behavior department itself. There's like operations, like how do we get animals to test with? How do we run those operation centers? And there's let alone the product piece and customer support. So there's a lot in there, and it's typically one of the things I think that we have been lucky to find is folks with like very high ownership and ability to take on large independent scopes. So it's the only way it works, because we're all generally doing something very different.
And when you first got funding, did you have a prototype, or was it an idea? How did you? I think that's a big question that people have in the hardware space. People have the ideas, but how were you?
Yeah. I had to eat a lot of crow fundraising the first time around. It seemed like we were two people in a deck. And we started talking to people for like 3 or 4 months. We were asking for $2 million to build a hardware company where neither of us had built hardware before. We're like, yeah, but this is a really good idea. Of course this will be funded. We were wrong. But we did like a little proof of concept. So just kind of a Wizard of Oz, like faking it. And we were transparent. We told like, this is faked, but you can kind of see how this was going to work. And that was enough to secure a 2 million kind of initial tranche of seed when we extended that out to 4 and change. And yeah, fundraising was fascinating. Yeah, I learned a lot in doing it, and I've become better at it. But I was a babe in the woods at first, which is fascinating to come from. Like, was working with some super fun projects at Google and some like really fun folks, and then just was total newbie at fundraising. And so that's been an experience. But I guess I'm better for it.
And what's the plan for the future? Are you expecting to raise in the future? I'm clearly probably you are, but like what are the key milestones for you in the next year for the team and for the product? And
totally. Yeah, great question. So I would encourage every founder on the call to make sure you have a good amount of cash right now. Like we've been super, I think generally you want to be conservative, but especially if you're in hardware. And I think we were really conservative with the shelter in place. Like we were all work from home a week or two before Twitter. So like a week or I think about the day the community spread case came out in Vacaville, I think it was, we sent everyone home and we're like, this is going to happen. And I think it's going to be around for the next 12 to 18 months, which is kind of like there's, and maybe just as in case it's helpful for folks, like I do think it's going to be around for 12 to 18 months. I'd encourage everyone to try to find customer segments they can serve now. We're very fortunate in that the separation anxiety case, like there's a number of announcements that'll come out soon for us on that front. And it's something that we think people are going to need a lot of help with in the near term. And also like working dog schools, security dogs, helping secure our airports, like those dogs need training in any market conditions, let alone dogs in consumers' homes. So we're fortunate there. But we're still going to take some money in the near term, just because you want to make sure you are always safe from a cash position, especially if you're hardware. And 2, I think there'll be, unfortunately, and fortunately for the startups that are able to make it, like there's gonna be a lot of opportunities for potentially some great folks to bring on board. And if you need resources like a building in Nevada to do refurbs or whatever it may be, like you're probably going to have access to a lot of resources that are heavily discounted in what looks to be a significant recession depression for the next year or two. And then lastly, like I would encourage everyone. One of my colleagues, we had the same idea at the same time. This wonderful woman, Camden, is a phenomenal colleague, and she trained a diabetic alert dog in her dorm room at Princeton. And she works both a companion and she works at a nonprofit called Dogs for Diabetics. They're arguably the leading organization. They've found out that dogs can detect low blood sugar in diabetic patients. And they just announced we're working as a consortium that we just secured funding from Purina to go prove that dogs can detect COVID-19. And that's one of the things that I don't know how much I should say, but we have fairly high confidence that this is possible. And we it's intuitive to us that this would be valuable because you can do real-time screening as people come in office buildings. You can do real-time screening of surfaces, doors, windows, whatever you might need to screen, and potentially samples. And the crux is going to be, can dogs do this? And then the second question is going to be, can we scale it up fast enough? And that's where Companion would come in, is can we rapidly accelerate the imprinting, so the dogs becoming alert to that particular smell, like sweat or sputum from COVID patients? And can we get 100,000 dogs out to the US, either with working dogs or with consumers bringing in their own dogs to train at shelters with our equipment? It's a very long-winded way of saying, yes, absolutely. I think it's winter out there in terms of fundraising, but that's why you should always try to work with long-term, thoughtful investors who are investing in the long term, and especially, and also two is keep being scrappy. Like don't let whatever you're currently facing block you from trying to push some product of value out there. Like try to identify a customer segment that is still going to be there in 12 to 18 months of recession. Try to use the time as well as you can. And especially I don't want to say there's upsides to this. Like this is a horrible period for many reasons. But try to find ways to help if you can.
Well said, John. I think on that note, we'll wrap up the conversation here. John, thank you so much.
Of course.
It was an awesome conversation. I think you gave us a lot to talk about. Claude actually just posted a link to an article about dogs fighting COVID-19 in the chat window for those that want to check it out. But yeah, thank you so much for this. And thanks everybody for taking part. We're going to post this up on our YouTube channel, and we'll send out some links to Isabel. We'll probably send out some links later on today, but appreciate you taking the time, and thanks again.
Of course. Thanks so much, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.